Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian. I am taking a look today at a developmental Swiss prototype semi-auto rifle. This is an SK-46. These were developed just after World War II. SIG and the Swiss government were looking to develop a semi-automatic rifle to replace all of their K-31 carbines, and this is one of the guns that they tested out. Now, it wasn't successful, obviously, or you'd probably be a lot more familiar with it. In fact, they only made 18 of these guns. 13 of those were made in 7.5 Swiss, and 5 of them were made in 8mm Mauser. Now, according to what I've been able to find, of those 8mm guns, 2 of them are actually in Egypt, or were a couple of years ago. And it occurs to me that the 1940s is kind of when Egypt was, they were using 8mm Mauser. They were looking for and would shortly thereafter adopt the FN-49 and the Hakim, which is a copy of the Swedish Ljungman, both of those rifles in 8mm Mauser. And so it seems like Egypt may have either been specifically targeted as a potential market, or they may have approached SIG about developing a self-loading rifle in 8mm. At any rate, this particular rifle is in 7.5 Swiss, as are 13 of them. It uses a 6-round magazine. It uses standard K-31 style charger clips, and it is a gas-operated tilting bolt mechanism. The Swiss appear to have kind of liked the tilting bolt system. They use that on a bunch of the developmental semi-autos. This particular rifle came out of the SIG factory. The factory sold a bunch of the duplicate guns in their reference collection a number of years ago, so there are a few of these out in the wild now. And like I said, 18 were made. I have been able to document, the lowest one I found was 96, the highest one was 111. And it's interesting I should point out, most people would look at it, for example, this rifle is number 102. They'd look at it and say, well, I have number 102. That probably means they either made a couple starting at 100, or they made at least 102 of them. In fact, SIG numbered a lot of its experimental rifles in a single continuous serial number range. So, for example, they had during the 1940s, 42, 43, they had a prototype semi-auto U series rifle, which is interesting in that it had a little periscopic optical sight like on the K-31 42 snipers. Those they made 16 of, and they were numbered in the 70s and 80s. Then there was an N-46, which apparently only 2 were made. Those were in the low 90s. There are probably a couple other models out there. And then you hit the SK-46, and they just continued the same serial number range. So, by the way, I should point out, a lot of that information comes from Automatwaffen by Reinhardt and Amrein. Probably the only decent source of information, at least the only one I'm aware of, about these Swiss prototype rifles. Couple other interesting details about this. All of the rifles were machined with scope mounts in the receiver, although apparently only one of the rifles actually ever had a scope made for it. And these rifles had this interesting gas disconnect to allow them to be used with rifle grenades. So why don't I show you some of this up close? We can pull the bolt and the operating rod out and take a look at them. It's kind of cool. And yeah, we'll take a closer look. So just looking at this from the top, it looks like a pretty kind of awkward gun, and it sort of is. You've got your receiver over on this side, and then you've got your operating rod and gas piston all over in this separate tube, which is a little bit odd. Our sights are basically identical to Swiss K-31 sights. The whole front end of the rifle looks very much like a K-31. Of course, that's the pattern that the Swiss liked. It's what they were using, so why not use it on the new experimental guns. The magazine is similar to a K-31, but not quite identical. It is very slightly curved, and they're not interchangeable. They are serial numbered to the guns. So the markings you will find on these rifles, you have the serial number and SIG Neuhausen spelled out on the left side of the receiver. We have our safety back here as well. Safe is in the front, and fire in the back. And then we have the model designation SK-46 right there on top of the receiver. Now, interestingly, the bolts are actually marked with both a serial number and a caliber. You can see that this is in 7.5. And there's this lump of metal sticking up right behind the chamber, which I find kind of interesting. I suspect, can't prove it, but I think it's a reasonable assertion that they probably discovered that these tended to eject straight back into the shooter's face. Certainly they are top ejecting guns, but I suspect they added this block as a case deflector. It is just barely short enough that it doesn't obstruct your sight picture when you're down at a 100-yard range. So clearly this was taken into account with the height of the sight and the height of this block. We have our bolt handle here. For semi-automatic firing, this bolt handle is locked down like this. You can also use the gun manually by lifting the bolt handle up and then, there we go, cock it. All right, so we can operate the action manually from back here with that bolt handle. All right, if we take a close look at the bolt there, when I open it, you can see that it pulls down. So once again, as with several other of these Swiss prototypes, the locking surface is right here at the back of the charger guide. Disassembling the rifle is very simple. Just depress this bolt release, and I can pull this all right out the back of the gun. So here is our bolt assembly. This is it in travel. Then when it locks, you can see that it lifts up, like so. So the main tube goes forward, the breech face hits the back of the chamber, that pushes it up, and it locks into place, and then you're ready to fire. Now to remove the bolt, we just slide it off of its rails. This is very much a Swiss bolt. It's really complicated inside here. I can pull this covering flap off. There we have our firing pin and firing pin spring. And then this guy, this just runs right in there and closes over all of those internals. Now this is our operating rod, and we have two separate pieces here. So I can take this guy out. This is what's actually locking into the bolt. Now when the bolt handle is straight like this, you can see that our bolt connection is locked into this tube right there. So if I push back, that's as far as this can go. It doesn't move. Hence, it doesn't move when you fire. All right, so that's the bolt handle straight. If I rotate the bolt handle down, the bolt carrier here disconnects from this main tube. What that allows it to do is cycle backwards under gas pressure when the gun fires. Our gas piston is right here at the front of this bolt connection rod. Now we have a disassembled schematic of this rifle from SIG, and we know that the gas port is actually, it's about here, somewhere up in here. And then there's a tube that comes back, and this is our actual gas regulator. So when you turn the bolt handle horizontal, it's actually intended to be used with rifle grenades, and I believe that operates a gas cutoff in here. If it didn't operate a gas cutoff, as soon as you ran the bolt horizontal and fired the gun, it would blow the bolt back in your face. And that doesn't seem like something that SIG would include as a design defect. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I always love taking a look at experimental and prototype developmental rifles like this, and they're just fascinating to look at because they have so many odd and unusual features. So thanks for watching. Tune back in to ForgottenWeapons.com for more developmental semi-autos.